Today we're going to talk about memory reconsolidation and some of the techniques that you can use to help bring it about for yourself and for others. My guest is my daughter, Yael Zivan, who has been studying memory reconsolidation and experiential therapies with some of the luminaries in the field, whom we'll talk about in this episode. And I'm so happy and delighted that she is carrying on this mission in her way, bringing healing and support and compassion and love to people through this neuroscience breakthrough that we've really only had for the last 20, 25 years that really shows us how to shortcut transformation and make it effortless and permanent. So with that big a promise, let's not delay. Without further ado, Yael Zivan, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thanks for having me, Howard. It's an honor to be here.
And I should say welcome back because you were a guest interviewer when we talked to Alan Parry about a year ago. And in interest of full disclosure, we have met before. You are a daughter of mine. I want to talk about your work because you and I discovered memory reconsolidation and transformation and trauma healing around the same time. And you have turned it into your passion, your obsession, and your career. And you know a lot more than I do about a lot of stuff. And I wanted to continue bringing to my audience these concepts. What can you tell us about your own interest in this? Because you're an artist, you're a musician, you've done a lot of jobs and all this. And something about this really captured you. Can you talk about what that is?
I'm getting a lot of sort of Chiron wounded healer coming up for me because I found this work exactly when I needed to, when I'd gone through a lot of pretty intense times and challenges within our family dynamics that were coming up. A lot of unhealed, unresolved things were going on, and a lot of external world things were pretty intense and going on. And I had finally come to a place, thanks to you, where I was realizing that I had a lot of sort of PTSD going on. And I had found some really incredible therapists to work with. But what they really got me to this place of was all of these different things that had traumatized me were there forever, or just I now knew about these things that were traumatizing. And when you find out that you're traumatized, it can be good if there's a next step, but it does seem the entire world accepts the fact that trauma is maybe permanent or mostly permanent, or you have to work every day and pay a therapist a lot of money every day in order to get to a place where some of your trauma might have been down a little bit, just a little less spicy, right? And then just turn it a little less spicy. And that, for the amount of stuff that I felt like I was dealing with, didn't feel possible or feasible. And so I think I've always had a knowing in the back of my mind that there's a way that you can do something and you can work really hard at it, and maybe it's really expensive and you get somewhere. And there's always going to be a way that can do it way better. I've always had this thought in my head, and I'm learning more and more that it's actually true. And this felt like that secret knowing of, yeah, you could work really hard and try really hard and learn all these different things and you might get somewhere, or you could do this other thing and bippity boppity boop, you're halfway there way faster than you ever thought was possible.
So what I wanted to talk to you about was several of the therapeutic modalities that you have been studying in depth that I have not, but also the one that we're both studying in depth, coherence therapy. What's your understanding of what memory reconsolidation is and what it does, and how that differentiates, how that's different from other schools and other psychotherapeutic experiences that you'd had and other ways of thinking about healing?
Basically, wherever someone's at, we're not gonna teach them how to press their own internal knowledge and truth. We're going to very gently and curiously get more evidence about why they feel that way. So if they have a symptom, you want to give me a symptom?
How about losing control in anger when you, let's say at a workplace, you're having a discussion and all of a sudden somebody questions an assumption underlying your proposal, and all of a sudden you feel like a heated flush of anger that you have to either suppress or lash out with or leak or excuse yourself.
So I would say with that, a general, maybe what your automatic self response would be after something like that would happen. It might be delayed rage at other people. It might be a deep amount of guilt and shame that might come up, which is a very difficult and painful emotion to metabolize when you're alone. It's terrible. It's awful. And evolutionarily, it's supposed to. So when we're working with those emotions, the first thing we do is I like to think we just get onto the floor and be at the level with that person and really show them that whatever those shame and guilt might be, we're gonna introduce that later. We're gonna just let those emotions go, and we're gonna really listen compassionately to the part that needed to react in that way, and give that part a moment of honoring. I just had this in a session just now where I had a client who they have a part that doesn't allow them to connect with others. This part is terrified that if they ask for help from someone else or they get emotionally seen by someone else, that means danger. And that's something that happened from young childhood. Now, what we did was we spent some time with that part, and we eventually got to a place of honoring it and seeing that part had existed to protect their 4-year-old self. So even though initially there was a lot of anger towards that part because that part has been isolating them and making them feel like every situation is a moment in which they should hide their true self and expect danger, and it's cost them a great deal. But now when we sit down and we have a moment of like empathetic mediation between that part and the person, there's a moment where they recognize, oh wait, this part came to me when I was 4 and I was terribly alone, and it's kept me safe enough. So now how can I honor that part, thank it, and take ownership of my own body so that when something like that happens again, that part knows that I'm in control now. I'm the adult, and it doesn't have to be flooded or engaged, and it can go back and play with the other children in your mind. Proverbial inner child is unburdened.
Gotcha. So I want to contrast that with the way I was taught to coach. Someone comes to me with that kind of behavioral symptom. So the first thing I do is I ask them like how they want to be, very similar to it. We're always going for the outcome. And I'm going to straw man this a little bit because good coaches are more nuanced and subtle than this. But basically, this is the direction we're taught to go in. Okay, you establish the gap between the goal and reality. And then we point out to the client that what they're basically saying, it's largely a he for this particular issue. Basically, he's trying to achieve what we call a dead man's goal, which is anything a dead person can do better than you and more reliably than you. We call it a dead person's goal. Like not yelling at someone, a dead person definitely will win. Right? You're never going to achieve perfection like a dead person, not yelling. So we share that and we get chuckles out of it. But deep down, there's a little bit of shaming, if not a lot of shaming. Like this is such an easy thing that a dead person does it better than you. Right. All you have to do is inhibit. Then we would work on strategies for inhibition. So breathing, relaxation. As a guy who's interested in the holistic human being, we would talk about sleep hygiene, diet, relationship, all this stuff, but it would all be to support the organism to, in that moment, be stronger than the impulse.
Yeah.
And so people can get much better behaviorally doing that with all these strategies. And it's not what you're talking about. So I'd love for you to respond to that description of here's how I learned to handle this as a top-level executive coach.
I would say the difference, what you're saying is there is an element of shame and there's an element of whatever that behavior is, it's obviously not serving you. There's an employee at your office who is behaving badly, right? Or is behaving wrongly, or is behaving in a way that they really thought was the way that they were taught at their old job. And so instead of just deciding we need to fire that person, has anyone actually explained to them, oh gosh, I see how hard you're working for the goals of this workforce. I'm curious if you got the same training as me, or if you need, there's an element of pure human connection and love that's brought in that when you have that in yourself, like I now have that in myself. I am happy to say that I have that in myself. If I ever have a moment of fear of every so often you think a thought that is just there to hurt your feelings. You're just sitting there and you're like, I wonder what's the most hurtful thing I've ever inadvertently said to someone. And you're just like, why would I say that? I'm sure I have thought the worst thing of my entire life. I'm sure there was one thing that really hurt someone more than anything I could have thought. And now I'll just think to myself, yeah, we're not going to go down that route. We're just not going to try and hurt our own feelings. The world does that good enough. So when you've created true compassionate inner child work, what you notice is you don't hate anyone else in the world because you see them the same way as you see yourself of, oh, they have schemas too. They have their triggers too. They have their abandoned inner childs too, so that you no longer have even social anxiety because this level of compassion that you cultivate, first of all, it always has to come from self to self. So don't go love bombing other people while you still have hatred for yourself or cringe for yourself. I would say that my work starts and ends with teaching someone how to radically love themselves and take their own side, because the world, when you notice things about the world that are actually designed to make you sick, to make you not really like yourself, and then to profit other people who want you to feel that way. And then you realize, wait, loving myself and truly loving myself as imperfectly as I am, with compassion as to why I am that way, you become like a noble gas where nothing can really mess with your atomic structure at all. I don't know if that answered your question or caught a little.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there's definitely compassion. There definitely can be compassion involved in my coaching process.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, but certainly that goes a long way towards creating this trusting relationship. But what I wanted to get at was the assumption that the reaction, wherever it came from, is unmovable, right? You don't have the same kind of level of business experience that I do in these places. You have a lot of business experience that I don't have, but I don't think it's involved taking like Myers-Briggs and DISC and various kinds of tests and diagnostics that tell you how you are, which is a message. And then also, I don't know how much time you spend on LinkedIn, but there's every day in my inbox, there's a flood of memes around be like this is good, that's bad. Be the source of light in your team. Don't be complaining. Fortune cookie advice. And it's all well-meaning, and it's all, and for someone who's there, it's probably a good reminder. I get triggered by it a lot because I'm like, it's not that easy.
Well, yeah, because toxic positivity is still toxic.
Say more.
If treat everything like you're dealing with a child that's having a meltdown, okay? If you see a child that's having a meltdown, they don't have access to resources. And their meltdown is scientifically programmed to get them resources as fast as possible. Okay? But when your ego steps in, you're like, that's negativity. We need positivity. That's not helping anybody. So you need to get down at that level with that person and actually be like, what are you suffering from? What is it? What can I do? What the person needs to feel above all is that they are worthy of care and that they are worthy of being listened to, and they're worthy of someone being curious about their inner world and being curious about their suffering.
So I want to come back to this idea because that's the basis of your work. I'm still looking to contrast your approach with a coaching counteractive approach of I'm going to what's wrong with teaching someone, okay, you do this breathing and it works, right? So if their body is at a 9 out of 10 on a daily basis and I teach them how to breathe. By the way, I did a cold plunge this morning, first time in a year and a half. I went down to the pool and I did not shriek like a toddler. So and that definitely put me in a better mood and a lower stress state. What's the advantage of, and maybe for some people, like that's absolutely the first thing you have to do, right? Yeah. If someone's going to get fired, you're like, okay, stop it. Here's how you stop doing it. We're going to counteract because the way you're behaving is a danger in some way. But how do you take things further than that?
I think if you really want to go further, having the intention or the mindset that no matter what the person may have done, their intention was the highest possible intention. Giving someone that benefit of the doubt is so powerful because our world is pretty toxic. Our world is pretty full of people that have learned that the only way to feel safe is to show the comparison between them and another person who's not as good. We've learned so many things about how to be safe in a terrible world, like being in a school, being in a place where you can't control your environment and you have to protect yourself from certain people and you need to play sort of a game of who's the smartest, who's the best, who's the most popular, who's safe with the teacher. There's so much going on when you're a child where you don't have control over your environment, and you do learn tools in order to get you enough dominance to survive the hellscape, right?
Or invisibility.
Yeah, invisibility. These are all tools that you have when you don't have control over your environment at all.
So one of the things that keeps coming up in my mind as an image is I'm thinking about people in expensive business suits, like being grown-ups. And the way we're talking about them is that they are essentially still children in a lot of their deepest motivations. They're still trying to impress Mrs. So-and-so or not get beat up by so-and-so or not be bullied or...
You're not aware of that. When you're so focused on the goal, whatever the goal is, safety, dominance in order to achieve safety, something to prove that you were worthy of love or what, you don't even know what your actual motivation is. You're just on the autopilot of all. And when you're on autopilot, you're letting all of your schemas drive the car.
So you've used the word schema twice now. Let's define it. What is a schema?
Great. So a schema is it's the code. It's when you're computer programming, it's the code. If X, then Y. If someone gives me a dirty look, then I must retreat and see, did I do anything wrong? I need to worry about this. A schema is what your brain knows before you do. In order to make your human experience more streamlined, you learned how to pre-program certain behaviors in emergencies. So if someone is about to hit you, the part of your brain that has the schema of duck will come in, right? Now, we don't need to fix that schema because that schema is great. The schema of if I touch hot, pull hand away, that's another schema. We don't need to worry about those schemas. Schemas are part of your lizard brain, which means they move very fast and they're not very spiritual parts. They're survival parts. When you have a human experience, the fastest part needs to jump in first. So the part that's going to keep you surviving. Now, after a while, there are certain schemas that keep coming in as if an emergency were happening that are just not an emergency anymore. So maybe when you were a child, in order to not get hit by mom, you need to make a joke and that protects you from mom. So in moments of violence, I must demure and be funny and be small. Now that definitely helped you survive when you were a child, maybe into your teen years. Maybe it became a gift that you were able to have comedy so easily come to you as a survival mechanism, and that became a gift from that schema. However, you might want to change that because now you're an adult and there are other resources that are available to you now that you didn't have when you were a child. Like the resource of, I don't really have to agree with this person who's putting me down, but the schema is still going to be activated because it was built to be permanent, because those permanent safety measures cannot afford to forget themselves. So the way that we actually edit a schema is we reactivate it by triggering the question of what happens if someone's mean to you. What do you notice? Say someone's mean, so that what the imagination guru comes in and says, imagine this is about to happen to you. What do you do? Because imagination is a great testing ground. And it works because it's the same coding, right? It's the same stimuli. So someone comes in, says something mean to you. You now in this moment can say, okay, I'm trying to make a joke. I'm trying to be funny, or this is going to come up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, whatever your schema might be. And as soon as you get the schema really clear, what can happen, and the science is here, is you can have a disconfirmation. The ultimate goal is to find the truth, to find what really would happen. So to break that schema, you might, in your imagination, just say nothing and see how that would feel. And you can play that out. Because once your brain has new tools, new resources to play with, the schema is learning, oh, wait, there are other things I could do.
So let's come back to my imaginary person who gets triggered when someone questions an assumption upon which they based a proposal.
Okay.
And so what we could do, armchair, is tell ourselves stories about why that person is like that. Right. And we could say, okay, they have a schema of any criticism or any questioning means that whole worth is in question. They could be rejected, but we don't know. We have an idea. A lot of the skill that you bring to conversation, the process, the relationship is helping the person discover and articulate what the real prediction is and how specific or how general it is. It might only Al can trigger me because Al reminds me somehow visually, energetically, cologne, whatever, who knows, of Uncle Joe who used to put me down all the time because whatever. Or it could be when anyone does it, or it can be when a woman who's younger than me does it. And there's all this discovery to be done about what are the specific rules and triggers of that particular schema. Like you said, like it's a computer code, that it has parameters. And when you help people discover those parameters, how do you help them not get swallowed up when they think about, that's what happened when I was a kid, or I remember this traumatic event, or I remember this basic feeling of in my childhood of never being really seen and valued for who I am. I'm thinking about people that I want to work with as a coach, like they would run away from this.
Yeah. It's super real. It's super scary. And there's certain traumas that you don't even want to touch for the first long while, even. There's some traumas that you might not touch at all. And you just want to work on the attachment wound, or you might just want to work on schemas that will help them live a more happy and productive life. Or you might just want to, what I do a lot is body doubling. There are different ways in which you can have someone tap into a schema, understand a schema, be with a schema without putting them in the deep end, so to speak, and drowning them in it. There's moments where you can, a lot of this work is about consent. Is it okay to be with this? If at any point your brain sort of shuts down, a lot of the times a person's brain will just shut down and they'll dissociate. And you can tell them, hey, if you're dissociating, great, let's talk about something else for a second. I'm really good at becoming funny in a moment and just saying a light little thing and just taking them away from it and maybe just bringing up something else, just really quickly distracting them like, oh my gosh, crazy thing happened to me this week, whatever it is. There are other things where you really want them in that moment and you need them to be present, but you know that it's going to be intense. You might ask them, can you imagine that actors are playing what happened on a little screen and you're watching it like it's a TV show? Tell me what's happening. That's one way you can do it, where it separates it. You can just be with the part. You can say, all right, this part that doesn't let you connect with anyone, I want you to visualize them and see them as like a warrior dressed in like this. And I want you to just see what it's like to be in their space, be with them. Are you feeling compassion towards them? Or like just visualizing, this is a good one actually, is I want you to imagine a person who's had your exact same life, but they aren't you. Do you feel compassion for them? So that you can separate, because it's a lot easier to feel compassion for another person than for yourself because of some screwed up code in our school, in our parenting, in our religious texts that say you must be meek, you must like always be checking yourself or whatever. And I think like ego and power, like feeling like shit about yourself doesn't actually pull you into being a better human, I don't think.
I would say that's like my basic critique of civilization is that the people who could use a little bit of that, a little bit of checking. So
Yeah.
like the people who are on top are those who lack the capacity or the inclination. So the rest of us who do care about other people and are not malignant narcissists end up checking ourselves and losing that race to.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I actually use that as a disconfirmation in a couple of sessions where I say, do you know what the powerful are doing and they don't feel bad about it at all? Stop being so hard on yourself. Like, if you thought about all of the people that are getting paid millions and millions of dollars to promote wars, and the worst thing that you've ever done doesn't come close to 2 minutes of them on a random Thursday, what would it be like if you were to actually let yourself have a freaking break? If you're seeing the ways in which our society and our culture values and rewards people's ethics, you're very motivated.
I suddenly had an image of like one of the big issues of our time is income inequality. I think the other big issue is guilt and shame inequality.
Yeah.
Maybe if we just shared it, if everyone had roughly the same amount instead of.
Well, maybe if we felt a little bit more guilt and shame, we would be more generous and pay some money to these powerful people, right? The more I look at the state of the world and the corruption at the top and the pain that the powerful inflicts upon us, all I can say is, as soon as you start loving yourself at the degree in which the powerful seem to hate you and want you to hate yourself, we might have a revolution on our hands.
Okay. So let's go back into some of the techniques. You mentioned the body double, where you're picturing someone just like you, or you're looking at a screen. A lot of this I remember from when I studied neurolinguistic programming 20 years ago, which I think is a fantastic.
Nerd.
Yeah. You hurt my you triggered a schema. That's what they call it.
I'm not a perfect therapist.
In high school, my entire group was called the Howies by the football team.
Oh, man.
So much to unpack. But so a bunch of stuff that you've done that I don't really understand at all. One of them is AEDP, which I don't even know what it stands for. There's accelerated
experiential dynamic psychotherapy, for sure. Got you. Yeah.
Talk about that.
So that is it. Okay. So memory consolidation is the room. And there are lots of doors that get you into that room. And one of those doors is AEDP. One of those doors is IFS.
Yeah. I just want to be real clear about what we mean by memory reconsolidation. So let me try, which is these schemas, these touch this hot stove and pull your hand away reflexes that we apply and misapply or apply where it's no longer necessary and certainly no longer serving us. That those memories are locked in until we use some of these techniques, or it can happen accidentally, randomly sometimes. So this through grace, where it gets activated and then disconfirmed by either real experience or imaginal experience or new knowing or reflecting on old knowing. And then it's just like double clicking on a cell in an Excel spreadsheet where until you double click on it, you can't overwrite it. But once you've double clicked, you can then overwrite it. And then, so my person who would no longer be triggered when someone asks a question challenging their assumption, they'd be, my gosh, thank you for bringing that up. Let's take a look. I just went into this assuming that this was right. Maybe it's not. Let's look at it. And they can do it with joy and delight and they don't have to suppress any kind of urge of antisocial or right. So that's memory consolidation. Now take it away. And
so AEDP focuses a lot more on getting into that space through acknowledging sensations in the physical body. When you become, all right, I'm going to do what AEDP people do, and I'm going to take a moment to think, which is one of the first things we do in AEDP is just we take some breaths, we might close our eyes, and we take just a moment to actually think about what we want to say or what we're feeling. I'm feeling pretty calm right now, I'm noticing. I don't really have any tightness in my chest. I'm feeling pretty open. I'm feeling pretty comfortable. Maybe I might feel a sensation of tightness in my throat. And then from there, if I were working with a client, but how are you feeling in your body right now? Or Howie?
Yeah.
Father?
Pretty good. This shirt is a medium, and after it was washed twice, it's definitely the wrong size. I feel a
All
little
right.
constriction in my pits.
Mhm.
I'm feeling a lot of happiness about our connection right now, about me learning from you, about hearing just your level of understanding and compassion and power to help people in the world. I'm feeling a little claustrophobic because it's afternoon and my office window is facing, the west, and so I had to close the blinds. So
Mhm.
all the light here is artificial, so it stays. So I don't have like slats across my face, and I am missing a little greenery, a little space. I appreciate the was it a monstera behind you?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a whole side. I could get into that, but
So I'm appreciating your plant,
mhm.
and I'm rooting for you.
Beautiful. Okay, so great. So what you're doing when you're noticing your body, it does a couple of things. One of the things that I think happens first is if you're able to sit and do a body scan, your mind already knows that you're not in terrible danger. Because if you're being chased by a gnarly pack of dogs, you're not going to be like, do I have inner ear pain? Let me just feel that. You don't have that. Actually, it's like one of those things when someone's having a panic attack, you ask them, what can you smell? What can you taste? What can you see? What can you hear? This physically just reorients your mind into, I'm not in danger because I'm able to take this moment to see how I'm doing. The other thing that it does is so your neocortex, the part of your brain that's whatever is on your computer screen, let's say, it's whatever the RAM is. I forget what the computer word is, but the top of your brain is just like all the tabs you have open, right? So when you're talking to someone, you're only able to access knowledge from that part of your brain, the tabs you have open. When you actually want to think, what is the real truth of that story? What do I actually remember? That's when you're going to go down to your subcortical. And the way you access your subcortical, you have to balance when you're working with someone. This is all stuff I learned from Tori, is you're actually having to balance different neural vibrations. You're really having to balance your body and your mind with your client when you're doing this kind of work. So you want to get them feeling things in their body, and it gets them into a very calm state. But those thoughts, the subcortical stuff, it's really rich and it's really important, but it's a lot more etheric. It's harder to pin down, but it has such deep wisdom and such deep knowledge and data that you have to mine that information very consciously and very gently with physical sensations. So I might say you're going through something stressful. I might say, how do you feel in your body? What are those tears telling you? And you actually wait and say, what do I actually know about those tears? And you take a moment and you do some deep breathing and you're activating your subcortical brain. And it takes a lot longer. It's a lot slower than your reptile brain that needs something really fast right now. But it has such rich wisdom that's coded into your body. And once you can, but at the same time, when you touch that, you have to go and bring it up to the top and talk about it. And then you go down and you go up. So you can't let one part of that brain have too much power and too much reigning power, I guess.
Dominance.
Dominance. That's the word. Thank you. So when you go into your body, you might not remember a word, but you're feeling the truth of some emotional things that might have happened. And then when we go up here, that's when we can edit it.
I took a bunch of notes of things that I hadn't ever thought of before. So when you said the body scan is essentially like the first level is you can't do a body scan in an unsafe environment. So just doing it is a feedback loop, is an internal neuroceptive loop to, it must be safe here because look at me doing a body scan. Mm-hmm. And I suddenly thought, maybe is that the purpose of things like smoking? Smoking a cigarette. Like people smoke a cigarette to feel relaxed. They're all the ER nurses are having like every day is like the most day ever. And then they want to come out. And so I wonder if that's a signal. Oh, I'm smoking. I wouldn't be standing here smoking, luxuriously inhaling and exhaling this leaf.
I think it's deeper than smoking. I think the smoking part is just the excuse to go outside and not be at work for a moment. As someone who worked in food service, it doesn't matter. Like, the smoking is just, I'm going to take a break and actually be with myself for a moment and not be in here and not give all my energy to the boss and to the work. I'm going to.
And to be clear, I'm not equating them in terms of efficacy, because what you're doing with the cigarette is you're outsourcing any knowledge or wisdom.
It's a ritual. Yeah.
Right. Whereas when you're slowing down, and I loved your metaphor of the open tabs, because, okay, if you ask me a question and all I have, I'm looking at my open tabs now, like whatever happens to be open now is probably not the ideal answer to your question, but it's my overlay over reality. This is my simplification map. And it reminded me of, you mentioned the fast thinking system and the slow thinking system, which comes from Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky, the professors who came up with, they basically invented behavioral economics. And their first theory, which I think they published in the early 70s, was called prospect theory. And it was the idea that you will make decisions based on whatever is in front of you. So there's this famous acronym, WISIAS, what you see is all there is.
Yeah.
So that if, and what you're inviting people to do, and what you did before you even answered the question, was modeling this kind of slowing down. I entrained to your slowing down, and I slowed down myself. Now, all of a sudden, I can search the entire system. I can search the files that are on Dropbox that may not even be on my computer, but just there's like ghost files there, but they're stored somewhere else. And I'm not just relying on what's in front of me, right? Like prospect theory was originally like, if you show people 2 television sets for sale and one of them is better and cheaper than the other one, all people will think about is which is better, and they'll be more likely to buy, as opposed to, do you want to spend $700 on a television set or something else?
Yeah,
anything
exactly.
else.
Yeah.
Savings, food, rent, charity.
What if you just rebought the exact same hair scrunchie only to lose it 700 times? What about that? What if that was the way that you spent your money? Yeah. And what you were saying something, and it reminded me of something as well. Just so much of the way that we were raised in schools and in workplaces is about, you need to know everything very quickly. So if there's a math question, you better have that answer, right? Who thought that was a good idea? Every time that I had to do like my math homework, I had so much joy out of it because I just sat down, I could take my time, I could use my little pencil, I could write all my neat little answers and do the work myself. Anytime someone had some kind of timer on, it was like the terror that I felt was clipping my intellectual wings, because when you're in a state of fear, it's a brainwave. When you're in the state of brainwave fear, all you have access to are your lizard instincts. And your lizard instincts are about survival, are about bare survival. They're about don't starve, don't get like caught in the rain on a cold night, don't get eaten by a bear, and don't let someone attack you. They are violent often. They're fawning, whatever it is. It's not actually your highest self. That's the most important part. So when you're able to come back into a calm moment and have self-love, self-compassion, not feel like all these little voices that you got from school teachers and bosses and crazy uncles and grandparents or parents, like all these things that you learned out of fear when you needed to in an emergency. And when you can tune into your subcortical, feel your body, take the time, know that there is enough of it. That's when you have access to higher planes of consciousness, like compassion, like curiosity, like joy, like comedy, like silliness, like whatever the things that actually mean that you can enjoy being a human being on this earth with other people. Those do not get to exist when you're in a state of fear or stress.
Well, I suddenly just thought about improv, which is possible, which on the surface is a contradiction to what you just said. So it's
oh God, it's so fun.
It's thinking on it's, when you're waiting to go up for your improv thing, I would often feel fear. Am I going to be fast enough? Am I going to come up with a funny line on the spot that I haven't workshopped? You have done improv a lot. You've taught improv. What is it for you?
It's the knowing that something will come. It's almost faith. It really is faith of whatever random synapse is going to fire when that first person says something. I'm going to catch the ball and respond to it, but you can't pre-catch the ball. You need to be in the moment with the person, and you need to trust that your thoughts are really fast and you're going to come out. And if you have something prepared or you're holding on to, I need it to be this way. Like you need to just jump in and be in play mode. Ooh, what's going to happen? I can't wait to find out. Mastery of improv is mastery of, even though I'm maybe in a time moment, I'm going to just let grace and joy and silliness lift me up, and I can't wait to see where it takes me.
Yeah, I'm thinking back again to my imaginary client who, what would have to happen for them not to snap in an angry fashion is to be willing to experience the unknown.
Yeah.
Right. Like when
that's why the imagination part can be so beautiful. Is you say, all right, we're in this moment together. We're going to rehearse it. What are other options that you could do? Obviously, the way that I would go about helping somebody who has what you were saying is I might be curious, what was a time when not knowing something was really dangerous for you? What do you know about being in a situation where you're in charge and someone usurps your authority? What does that remind you of? What do you feel in your body when that happens? Does your stomach roll over and you think about how your mom made fun of you in church? Whatever it was, like there might be a core to that. And another way you could go about it is, all right, let's figure out resources. So say you're in this situation that already happened, but we're going to play it differently. What do you notice about what you could have done? You could punch them in the face. Let's try that. What do you feel when you punch them in the face? Did that make it better? Did it make the business meeting pretty awkward? Or you could, and that's the beauty is once you have, I had a friend of mine was walking down the street and some guy insisted on following her and tried to keep talking to her. And she didn't know what to do in that situation. And I asked her, I said, what would you have liked to have done if you'd had time to think about it? And she said, oh, I could have said I'm meeting a friend and goodbye. Or I could have said, you can see me? I thought no one could see me, right? Once you have the time to imagine and to plot, you have way more resources because when you're in the calm, there's no stakes. What could I do? That's when fantasy is actually really useful because you can play out scenarios of how you would react. Or dreams, if you're almost about to die, what do? I would say with that person, give them an opportunity to play out different scenarios and see, was being silly actually more empowering? Or was being like, I love that energy, Deborah. Thanks for always bringing something new to the team. Thanks for giving me something new to think about. I really appreciate that. And then Deborah's face lights up and she feels valued and she feels safe and she feels included. And you feel like a beautiful leader who just brought something energizing. Your brain will be like, oh, resource. New opportunity, new different way of doing something. But you can't get there by just being like, what if you were less of a bitch, Jonathan? I don't know.
Yeah, what I suddenly got was like dominoes. Like when my one person changes, Deborah's got schemas too.
Yeah.
Right? And she just got a disconfirmation and the culture, like one leader can make such a huge difference. And I've seen this throughout my career where one leader with some sort of remarkable ability to lead other human beings does a bunch of stuff. And they use that leadership to, okay, we're going to put in this system and we're going to create this thing and all the systems remain and they go and it all falls apart because it was the intangible. The other thing is like when you said catching, it's like what really landed with me because if you could throw me most objects you could throw to me and I would catch them. I have very good hand-eye and I've played a lot of different sports.
Same, dude. Same.
On Friday, I had a paddle lesson because I'm not very good at this European sport paddle. And at first, I'm just warming up. I'm hitting everything back. But apparently, they're not good shots. Like they're not going to help me win, but I'm getting everything back. Then the teacher says, no, I want you to stand like this for the forehand. And I want you to bend your knees like this for the backhand. And I want you to do that with your other hand. And all of a sudden, all of my impulses, my instant reflex impulses, are only holding me back. And what I have to be willing to do is look like total numbnuts trying to change what I have been like. I was good enough. Obviously, I wasn't good enough because I wanted to take lessons to get better. But in my, like, there's this huge part of my psyche that's, no, don't be worse. Stay the same. Don't be worse in order to get better. And so, I think it's very equivalent to inviting people to just slow down and say, you know what? I don't have to know the answer instantly. But that was my defense, was to be able to do that on command.
Yeah.
That was like my lizard brain lassoed my neocortex and said, you perform, you be brilliant, you show off.
And then, and then you get other parts that are like, but also don't show off too hard because that makes you an asshole, right? You have to know everything, but you also have to not be that asshole. For folks who are listening to this and they think they might want to have a conversation with you about working together, how does somebody think about it if what they're going through, what they're experiencing, what they're frustrated with or suffering from, like, who do you help? I would say in general, people who do the type of work that Tori and Bruce and I are doing, we're more focused on getting you better or getting you to a place that you didn't think was possible. Really, if you want to actually change something about yourself and you need some help, or you want to change an emotional state in which you find yourself constantly being put into by your environment, I would say, great, let's talk, let's see what we can do. For people that just want someone to process like terrible things that have happened, or they just need to get some stuff out, I would say you can reach out to me and you can talk to me. But I would say there are other therapists that are much better at just daily or weekly just hearing what's going on and letting you just talk it out with someone. I would say my specialty and the specialty of this work is not trying to get you hooked on paying a flat amount every single week forever. I'm much more excited about seeing you massively change and improve your life and be a version of yourself that you didn't know was possible because you were never given permission or you were never given access to tools and resources to get you there.
Gotcha. Do you have some examples just so that it can land with specifics? Like, what sorts of things can you help people with? And the way I want to ask that is about like out external symptoms, because a lot of the times we don't realize that our symptoms are schema based. I have a thing with overeating when I'm nervous, and I was just like, okay, help me stop overeating, help me make smaller portions, put my fork down between bites, things like that, as opposed to, oh, that's a schema based on some whatever.
Yeah. I would say you asking me to come up with types of people that I can help or types of problems that I could fix is me trying to catch the ball before it's been thrown. So I would say anybody who wants to come talk to me, I will try my best to see what I can do for you. If you think that a different approach is better for you, then obviously go and find whatever's the best thing for you and use your judgment. And I'm just starting out. I'm pretty new at this. I'm learning more every single day. Some things I'm learning, I don't even know how to talk to people about because they're crazy. I would say if you feel a connection to me based on the things that I've said and you're curious, then reach out and I'd love to talk to you.
And how do people find you?
You can reach me at yaelzivanhealing@gmail.com.
Spell that.
YAELZIVANHEALING. I know how to spell at gmail.com. And I hope to see you there.
All right. Yael Zivan, thank you so much. Thank you for modeling this way of being. It certainly helps slow me down. It's not something that I ever learned to do on my own. Thank you for being there for me for so many years. And
Ditto. Back at you.
I hope folks who are watching and listening, some of them will reach out because you do have a gift. I turn to you when I'm struggling with a client. I will confidentially describe some of the issues and you can help me see things more clearly. So anyone who's working with me also benefits from your presence in the world. Again, so it's Yael Zivan healing at gmail.com.
Okay, cool. I had such a great time, Abba. You are my favorite person in the world, apart from all the other people that are also my favorite people, also in my immediate family. Love you so much.
Love you too. Thanks.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. You can find the show notes with links to the things we talked about at plantyourself.com/613. Again, if you'd like to have a conversation with Yael about working with her, it's Yael Zivan Healing, and that's YAELZIVAN Healing at gmail.com. So movement news, ultimate practice this past Sunday, 2 days ago, I was kind of awful. Really off and couldn't cover people, felt very, very slow. So going to take some time off around the Christmas holiday to just relax and recuperate. Still doing yoga on a daily basis, 15 minutes of strength, 15 minutes of stretch when I'm not working out with Jay on the beach. And I had another paddle lesson. You might have seen the video about that on either LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, where I talk about this lesson means that I have to unlearn all of my bad habits before I can develop good new ones, which means I'm actually worse now than I was before the lesson. But that's kind of the price you got to pay for improvement sometimes. So that's about it. Wishing everybody a really happy end of December, end of 2024. Here's to a transcendent 2025 of possibility and healing and compassion and curiosity and courage and coherence and composure and clarity and lots of other great C words. And as always, be well, my friends.